Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Partu. Joining me today is...
Connor Nielsen.
Fuck you, Connor. You stole my thunder. J-Boy Wonder.
And today we're here to review a film. Connor, what film are we reviewing?
We're talking about David Lynch's 1977 directorial debut, surrealist horror film Eraserhead.
Okay then. Well, Rasco, you hadn't seen this film before. Connor's the only one here who had. Rasco, what were your general thoughts on Eraserhead?
Well, it is a very, very weird movie, but it made me feel some type of way. I deeply enjoy the beginning of this movie, and I'm very confused by the rest, but I do have a read on it.
Okay, Connor, what were your general thoughts on Eraserhead?
So for this viewing, this was my second time watching it. It is so much more like mundane and normal than I remembered it being. I really like this movie. It's really good. David Lynch is still trying to find his voice, but there's a lot of his later stuff you can still find the way how you can always trace it back to this movie. I really like it though. It's a really good movie. I like the acting. I like the weird world it creates, and I just dig the story because there's a story here.
Okay, my general thoughts on Eraserhead. I want an hour and a half of my life back.
Of course!
Of course!
I feel like David Lynch took an hour and a half of my life and wasted it on his fucking trippy ass hallucination. This is just like, okay, I complain up and down about The Witch. This is not as bad as The Witch, but at the same time, The Witch is an actual movie.
This is a movie too.
This is not a movie. I swear to God, if anyone says, "Oh, well, it's just like Kubrick's the 2001," I will slap the shit out you. This is so fucking bizarre. Like, you call it a surrealist horror. This is a fucking comedy.
People do consider this a comedy.
This is like someone said, okay, what is the most pretentiously ridiculous movie we can make and have people actually be stupid enough to consider it art? That is what this movie is.
Whoa. Whoa. I can't take the word pretentious seriously when talking about this movie because David Lynch is just not a very pretentious person. He just kind of makes his thing, and that's his thing, and he doesn't really talk much about his movies. He goes, yep, that's my movie. And then he goes home.
Like, right from the beginning, just that fucking opening shot, I was like, what is this? What have I got myself into now?
It's the world's weirdest sex scene ever put to film.
Is that what it's supposed to be?
I mean, that's what I think it is. There's like a weird sperm creature comes out of his mouth, and it lands on a crater on Mars, and man in the planet pulls the lever, and, you know.
I tried to read a synopsis of the plot, and they just described the visual cues of the movie. Like, there's not a story here. There's
Yes, there is.
there's some vague notions of some themes surrounding sex as an object of horror. That's it. This is awful.
Oh man. Oh man. There's clearly a story here. It's a story about a person who's not ready for parenthood or being a husband or settling down, and he has clearly some anxiety about it. There's things in his life he wants to explore, but he's too shy to try to explore them, and he gets forced into this situation he doesn't want to be in, and then it kind of becomes more of like these abstract concepts of his fears start to materialize in these dream sequences he has, and like the woman in the radiator kind of represents the hope he wants in his life, and the woman who lives across the hallway is like the life he wants to live, but he can't really achieve it. And yeah, there's stuff here. I don't get what you mean by there's no story. I love the character of Henry. I think Jack Nance is an awesome actor. He's in a lot of Lynch's films. He's Pete from Twin Peaks, and I love the guy. I don't know. This movie took 5 years to make. It's one of the best sounding films I've ever heard. The movie looks gorgeous. The black and white photography is magnificent. I think this is a really good movie. It's not my favorite Lynch movie, but I really like it.
Rasco, where are you at on this, just generally? Does your read line up with Connor? Because I think we could all agree that there's some nature of sexuality here.
Oh, yeah.
Thematically.
Yeah, right. So I kind of look at this as closer to a painting than it is a film in the sense that, all right, because now we get into a whole fucking discussion about what is a fucking film. Like, do films require narrative? Because, I mean, who's the person that filmed like the construction of a house from like, the first brick to its completion? I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. I don't know who the fuck it was. Like, is that a film? I don't know. Is this a film? Is it a story? I don't know if it's a story as much as it is a painting that has ideas. I don't think that makes it bad. I don't think that's a problem at all. But I don't know. My read on this film is that it's kind of about being deeply and in a scary way incredibly uncomfortable with your circumstance in life. Like, just that scene where he's at the dinner and like they tell him like, you have a kid. Did you have intercourse with her? And all of that stuff. That is such an uncomfortable scene, and everybody in that scene plays it like it is just so uncomfortable, except for the guy just sitting at the table. And it's like all of these ideas that he intrinsically like has to have brewing inside of him that are just so horrible to say out loud. Like his fucking baby, like it's so unhuman. There's no way you could have any sort of compassion towards it. It's just this like creepy, amorphous, like just weird little dinosaur thing. And I feel like that's there to be like, he doesn't care about this. He doesn't see it as human. He's not like he doesn't feel anything towards this. It's not like when someone like, the first time I held my baby girl, I looked into her eyes and I knew I was in love. It's not like that. It's like, what the fuck do I do with this thing? It just cries and it's obnoxious and it doesn't even look like a human. I don't even like it. And then his wife, or I don't know if they're technically married, but like when they're in bed together and she's just like taking up the whole bed and like making weird like teeth noises. She's like clenching her teeth or some bullshit. And then she's like rubbing her eyes and there's like really creepy like squeaking noises. It's just like, he's really uncomfortable. And I think it's kind of about exploring just deep discomfort.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Rasco, because David Lynch was a painter before he was a filmmaker. And then he decided to make movies.
So.
It's just one of those things where, like, I see what you're saying, and I feel like there's some intent behind what's going on here. It's just when you make something that's this far out there, I have no idea how anyone wants to give something like this the thought necessary to come to these kind of conclusions. I just see nothing about this movie that is worth that much of my time. And I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just too mainstream or whatever. Maybe this is more on me, but god damn, if you have any sense that your time is valuable, I honestly, in all good conscience, cannot recommend anyone watch this movie. Like, the only way I would ever watch this movie again is if I got to watch an MST3K version of it. Because they would tear this movie to shreds. It's that kind of movie. It's so ridiculous. Like, you talk about the dinner scene. I sat there and laughed my ass off when the fucking tiny chicken started kicking and shit. And then the mother, makes the fucking orgasmic noise. Haley and I were sitting here laughing our asses off at it. I have no idea how anyone could sit there and look at, see, this is about the uncomfortable nature of dining with people that you don't know and having an awkward relationship with the family of your significant other. Yeah, that's what this scene's about. No, it's about a fucking, dead chicken that's, purinating all over the place while the mother has a goddamn orgasm, and it's hilarious.
Oh, well, I guess that speaks to different comedic sensibilities, because to me, when I was watching that, it's so awkward and uncomfortable, and there's, these long pauses in between lines of dialogue that I kind of started laughing at it, and then that happened, and I had no idea what to feel, and I was really perplexed by it. I think this movie does have, it attempts comedy, and I do think it succeeds. The doors on the elevator, he's just waiting for those doors to close, and I found that funny. I know that there are people that view this as a comedy, and, not this movie sucks, no, this is a deliberate, intentional comedy, and it's hilarious. So,
no, I think that this movie is trying so hard to gross you out and be weird that it's just awkwardly hilarious. It is a spectacularly hilarious failure. I just wish I could have watched this with 10 of my friends that hate movies like this, and that would be hilarious to do. Just sit here and MST3K it. That sounds so much more enjoyable than the experience I just had.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time really nailing down what I think it is, what Eraserhead even is, because it's I almost if you love movies, it's very possible you get nothing out of this, right? If you love narrative, it's possible you get nothing out of this, but it's strange because you look at, for example, you could walk into an art gallery and you could see a painting of a rusty bucket in some weird old garage or some bullshit. There's all sorts of paintings of just random still life items, and there's no sort of this is a stupid, just dumb brick. Who just paints a still life of a bunch of bricks and this we don't look at paintings and say this, and it's weird because obviously this is a film, so there are a lot of things where I don't know if you're really supposed to have any sort of reaction and this is only for certain parts of this movie. There are certain parts of this movie where I feel you're not necessarily supposed to have any sort of reaction beyond simply I'm looking at a really just kind of interesting image. The same way that when you walk into a gallery and you're just looking at paintings, you're just looking at images and they make you feel different ways and you kind of project onto them, and maybe there's not necessarily a narrative reason for some of the stuff in this movie.
The thing is, this is a movie that is all about the emotional responses you have while watching it, and my
emotional response was either laughter, boredom, or just pausing it to see how much longer it was left.
I think the whole emotional response thing can be attributed to, I think, most of, if not all of, Lynch's films. He's someone who's more interested in making somebody feel than anything else. And I guess that kind of comes down to different kinds of viewers. Because I like to think of, there's most filmmakers try to do one of two things, which is to make you think or make you feel. And I'm more of a feel person. I'm not when if it's something that's kind of there to make me think versus something that's there to make me feel. I'll always be more attracted to something that's there to make me feel. And I think that this movie does a really good job of having a very loose narrative that just sort of gets under that just digs into feelings very well. So I was able to connect with it in its own way.
How did you feel when the Radiator Woman was fucking dancing on the worms?
Okay, so those are like weird. I see those as like weird sperm creatures, and then the woman in the radiator is like represents some kind of beacon of hope, or like his something of his dreams or something great in his life. And she's like stepping on the weird sperm creatures, and she's like, "Look it, no creepy babies over here. Look how great it is." And then she sings.
Okay, if she
heaven.
represents, let me go full visual then. Fuck it. If she represents something great or something, imaginary, some kind of end that he's seeking, why the fuck are her cheeks that?
I don't know.
Because I think the idea behind her cheeks is that she is like a fantasy version of like a perfect woman for him, and the cheeks are not there for him. They're there to demonstrate how she is like a cartoon of perfection to him, but it's communicating to the audience through those cheeks that like she is like an unrealistic expectation of a perfect woman for him. But he probably doesn't see her that way. Or if he does, that's not really relevant. Like, he wouldn't really think of his perfect woman as having creepy scrotum ballsack cheeks. He would think of her as just like some extremely, I don't know, like I don't know what his actual ideal version of a woman is, but I think that is there to be like, this is like a cartoon idea of someone that he would be not uncomfortable with.
And Connor,
so
you said that David Lynch spent how many years making this?
He took 5 years to make this.
Okay, David Lynch, you don't owe me an hour and a half of my life back because you wasted 5 years of yours.
Oh my god. So when she's like stepping, she sings the song in heaven, everything is fine, and when he touches her, like there's just this white light, and he has like this like look of optimism and like there's purpose that just kind of comes to his eyes, and then she just disappears in his dream, and he's just on the stage there, and then a weird tree comes out and it starts bleeding, and then his head pops off and gets replaced by his baby's head, and then his head falls down in the puddle,
and how many drugs did you take to get this image? Like
me?
Just like that whole sequence. Oh, he touches her, and then there's blinding white light, and then there's a tree, and then his head pops off, and then his baby's head grows out of it, and then a boy has his head, and he takes it to a place, and then the place has really awkward comedy, and then the place drills a hole out of his head and sticks the thing in, and it literally makes erasers. What the fuck? This is a crazy person. This is literally the ravings of a madman. And you're trying to sit here and tell me it's fucking art.
Oh, man.
Hey, you put a fucking tampon in a teacup and it's art, man.
I agree. Anything can be art if you're trying to send a message for it. But at the same time, just postmodernist art is such a mindfuck of a thing, because the whole point of postmodernist art is anything can be art. If you're stupid enough to ever spend any amount of time or thought or, God forbid, money on postmodernist art beyond the point is that anything can be art, then you do not understand postmodernist art. Congratulations. Fucking Milan, before he became a Nazi, was on here all the time bitching about someone putting like a red dot in the middle of a canvas. I'm like, yes, it's art, because the point is it's something made by a person, so therefore it's art. But that doesn't mean it's good. God
the name of that painting is Red on White.
Yeah.
There is also White on Red, and then there is Red on Red and White on White.
Yep. Just like the whole idea of, oh, well, it's art because he's intending to send an artistic message. Yeah, sure, fine, I agree. Doesn't make it good. Doesn't make it worth your damn time. Jesus Christ.
But it also isn't something that, it's like, the movie, one, can't really be judged on a lot of the same criteria that you would for, like, almost any other movie that is, like, not any other movie, obviously, but vast majority of movies. You would critique on a completely different set of criteria, but you'd also watch for a completely different purpose than something like this.
Mm-hmm. This, like, I looked into a bit of the history of this, and apparently it got no attention when it came out in limited release in theaters, because it's not worth anyone's time. But then it was being played at like late at night on television stations, like it was a midnight movie or whatever.
Yeah, it's one of the original midnight movies.
Yeah, and like that makes perfect sense because people are drunk or high or whatever at night up late watching television, and they see this and they think it's brilliant.
But don't you think there's like a technical skill to all this stuff? Like, the framing.
There's a technical skill to Michael Bay's films, Connor.
I mean, oh my, whoa.
There is. I'm a CG. I love CG art. You can bitch up and down about how awful those movies are, and I'll agree with you. You can't say that the CG isn't technically proficient. You can't say that Michael Bay's use of framing and putting multiple objects on screen moving at the same time isn't visually dynamic. There's a technical sense of skill to those films. That doesn't mean they're good. That doesn't mean they're worth your time.
Well, what I'm trying to say is, I think there's a story being told here mostly visually. The first 10 minutes, there is no lines of dialogue.
Yeah, I counted. That was the first point at which I paused the movie, was to see how long it took for the lady to say something.
Has anybody seen the screenplay for this movie?
I have not, but
I'm assuming it's written in human feces, so I'm not reading it. Oh,
it's like on a napkin or something.
Like, it seriously just feels like you put an acid trip on film, and like maybe that's read into it and say that there are all these meanings and subtext and stuff, and like. I feel like as long as I just stick around the general area of something with sex, I can get any read I want from this fucking movie. Here we go. This is a movie about the character of Henry learning that he needs to be a better father. Because of certain scenes, like when he gets his head chopped off and his son emerges from him, that's him realizing that his son's all he has in the world, and that scares the hell out of him. And it would be easier for him to just kill his son or whatever, but that's not really an option, which is why the world ends at the end of the movie, because he realizes killing his son the way he imagines would be the end of the world for him. See? I can fucking make up anything that's just vaguely around the details. It doesn't matter. That's not an interpretation of the movie. That's just me bullshitting.
Well, okay. You like making up something versus you actually having like an emotional response to something, like it's all comes down to intent. Like I see it, he's horrified of his child because not only does it look like a weird dinosaur creature, but he's scared of it supplanting him. He's scared of it like taking away his entire life. And then when like the attractive woman who lives across the hallway, she looks at him and she only sees him as the child that was there. And like that, I think that there's a deliberate like intent behind the images that develops like, Connor, that meaning.
My question for you though is, if you heard someone make the argument for the movie that I just made that completely contradicts yours on every conceivable level, but they made it seriously, they made it genuinely, what could you point to disagree with them?
I couldn't really point to anything to disagree with them, even though like I would say that, you know, our two interpretations don't contradict each other on every conceivable level. But the thing is, we'd have to like, I would sit down with this person. I'd look at all the images and all the scenes and everything that kind of goes into the the film and then talk about how I get my interpretation scene to scene. And this is more of an interpretist sort of thing rather than because David Lynch doesn't like talking about his movies. So he's like he has an interpretation, he has his own intentions behind it, but he doesn't want to really talk about them. And I know that you're very much a the artist is dead type of person when you talk about reviewing movies and all that stuff. And I think this is about as close to the author's dead that you get, because he won't even talk about what his own stuff means. So, like,
yeah, he won't talk about what
his
own movies mean, but I don't know if this means anything. I honestly don't know if this means anything by the end of it, because there's so little in the piece to go on to apply any kind of actual narrative sense to it. Like Rasko's point, it's a series of paintings. That works a lot better as an interpretation. It's a series of really fucked up abstractionist paintings just done as a film. That's a lot better and actually worth something. But trying to apply any kind of narrative thought to this, trying to develop any kind of sense of who Harry is as a character, you're shooting in the dark, and you can come up with anything because there's so little there.
I don't think there's so little there. I look at Jack Nance's performance, and he has subtle facial tics and body language cues, and the way the character responds to lines of dialogue, or the way he interacts with others. There's a social anxiety this guy clearly has. Now, of course, the father of Mary is like clearly actually an insane person, but I think it's just easy to say.
What is the significance of the mother having an orgasm when the chicken periods?
I don't know. I think she might be like mentally ill as well. I think.
What is the significance of Mary having a seizure and coming out of it as her mother combs her hair?
I'm sorry. Wait. Say that again. I think you cut out on my end.
What is the significance of Mary having a seizure and coming out of it as her mother combs her hair? What is the significance of Mary's grandmother being paralyzed in the kitchen and her mother puppeteering her arms to make a salad? What is the significance of these visuals?
What I take from like the catatonic grandma who's just sitting there, I read into a history between these two, and there's like a history of like maybe her mother taught her how to make salad or something, and she wants to make her mother a part of the food that they make, and so she kind of puppets it to do it, and it's kind of a funny little silly gag visually speaking. But I think there's and the world that we see is like this weird industrialist wasteland, kind of makes everyone this way. Everyone's miserable, and so I don't know, people trying to find some kind of happiness in it.
Okay, let me ask you this question, because this is really what your and I interpretations differ on. And Rasko, I feel like you're not in the middle. You're leaning more toward Connor's, but I don't think you like this movie as much as Connor does. So here's the general question to throw out, and this will probably end up being the clip. When are you giving something too much credit?
I think I'm giving something too much credit when I don't... I think we have a very similar read on it. When I don't think that there is care put into it on the filmmaker's behalf. I don't think, like we talked about earlier, I don't think Michael Bay cares about the... He's just sort of there. He shows up and he shoots the action. He just kind of does what he has to and like what they sort of plan. I don't think he genuinely cares about the story he's telling. I think David Lynch had something personal on his mind, and he wanted to get those feelings out and put them into his own expressionist art.
I have two words for you.
What's that?
Zack Snyder.
Yeah, no, you're right. Zack Snyder does have his own feelings and his own thoughts and his thing that he wants to get out through his films. I don't like his ideas. I don't think he's good at telling his stories, but he does do that. He does have his own thoughts and his own ideas, and he does put those out there. And as an artist, I can respect that. I just don't like his art.
Yeah, but there are people who read into Batman vs Superman and call it the greatest movie ever made, and they give it too much credit. They're giving Zack Snyder way too much credit. You, I feel, are giving David Lynch way too much credit here, because this is a fucking acid trip. There's so little here. You can read practically anything you want to into it, like you just did with The Mother. You're giving this film way too much goddamn credit because there's not enough there to have any significant read. This isn't like I said it at the beginning of the episode. This isn't like 2001. This isn't like Melancholia, where everything is there on the screen and is solidified and cemented scene by scene and builds on top of itself. This is just fucking throw it on a wall, see what sticks, and then throw some more. This is complete and utter madness. And,
Well,
if they wanted to make a movie that was completely nonsensical, they succeeded.
Well, the thing is, Ian, you asked me about the significance of The Mother, and that's just a small, minute detail that's just kind of there on the side. And
well,
so,
I'm talking about. I asked you about the significance of 3 scenes in the movie that are like back to back to back. 3 specific moments in the movie. Like, I was more curious about why the mother just fucking orgasms when the chicken periods, but like, there's so much just random shit like that is completely purposeless.
I think that taking
over
those
the place.
three individual things in isolation is missing the point. Taking those 3 things together builds a sense of what this household, how it operates, and building a corner of this world.
I kind of feel like, here's like where I'm kind of standing with this movie. I think what this movie is doing is all of the visuals are purely there to communicate to the audience how they're there to just make you feel what he feels. And we're not seeing his real life. We're not seeing anything that's actually happening to him. We're only seeing visuals that communicate how he feels. It's like a weird thing where there's a like, and this goes back to the thing
Emotional realism.
when I was talking a second ago about like the scrotum cheek girl, like that's like the best example. I think that the reason her cheeks are like that is because it is meant to communicate to the audience that like this is a cartoon version of a girl with the nice rosy cheeks, but like that's not what he sees. And I think that's kind of the entire movie. Like when he's at dinner and the chicken's like being a fucking weirdo, I think that's just like, have you ever been to a dinner where like everyone there is like either way more, I don't know, like sophisticated with their table manners or something? I don't know. It could be any number of things. But the bottom line is that I think he feels really uncomfortable and awkward in that dinner situation. And like the orgasm could be some sort of stand-in communicating. Like, have you ever been in a dinner where someone in the family, like a family conflict comes up that's way too personal and private for you to really be there, but they don't seem to care that you're there? Things like that. I don't think that we're seeing anything that actually is happening to him. I think that we're only seeing visuals that don't even necessarily have to make sense, but are just purely there to get a reaction from you. Like, this makes me feel this way, and he's trying to get me to feel this way. I think the only thing that is really a through point is just we're with him emotionally all the way through. What we're seeing, though, I think is probably ultimately irrelevant in the sense that it doesn't necessarily have a concrete meaning, but it does elicit an emotion from you as an audience member. And so I think that's ultimately the goal. It's just to string you along emotionally with him, but we don't really see the story in terms of the actual practical side of like what is happening in his reality. We're just seeing how can we express his emotion in a way that you'll just feel it, and we don't have to explain it. He doesn't have to come out and say it. You're just seeing it. And that's kind of where I'm standing. Now, again, I've only seen the movie once, but that's kind of where I'm feeling, because it's like this really interesting area where, like, I don't know. For me, like, this falls into like this weird category of movies where it's a movie, but it's not a movie in the same way that almost any other movie is a movie. It is very much the same
It's
thing as filming
experimental, I'll
someone
give you
building a
that.
house.
I'm sorry.
It's
Say
oh,
that
go
last
ahead.
part again, Rasco.
It's like the same thing as filming. It was Andy Warhol. He filmed like I think it was the Chrysler Building. He just filmed it for like 4 hours or something like that, and that was one of his pieces. It was just literally a single shot of like the Chrysler Building just standing there, and like is that a film? I mean, it's a piece of art, but is that a film? I guess it's technically a film that's shot on film, but it's not a film in the same way that literally any other narrative film is a film.
Yeah, and again, this gets back to postmodernist art, where the point is that it is a person expressing themselves. That's it. That's all you're meant to really take from it, is you're not meant to give it so much credit, and this is just one of those things from like, I feel like, Resco, do you feel like you can give something that contradicts every single point Connor has said about this movie and call it an equally valid interpretation of the film?
Ugh, I don't know.
Like, I feel
I
like
mean,
you could, and the problem with that is this is like a tenet of logic. So, get your Spock ears on. This is a tenet of logic. You cannot have A and not A exist in the same statement. You cannot have something that both is and is not at the same time. So you cannot have a movie be a quote unquote capital M movie, because I'm going to get into this shit now. You cannot have a movie be a movie if you cannot have people agree on a specific interpretation of events. And like the only interpretation of events I can agree on here is there's something going on with the nature of sexuality.
okay, well, hold on for a second. So, if you were watching like a scene in a film, I'm trying to think of like a specific
There's a
scene in
difference
some
between
movie.
something being vague and something being
No. That's
okay.
that's okay. What I'm talking about is okay. So you and me watch. What is a really obvious movie? Like, okay, let's just go to Empire Strikes Back, right? So you and me, we watch Empire Strikes Back, and let's say that there's some sort of scene where, like, okay, so like obviously in Empire Strikes Back, Luke is making a big mistake when he goes to fight Vader. He's doing exactly what Yoda's telling him not to, the quick and easy path, right? And that's obviously what's happening there, but you and me could watch that movie and someone say, I don't think that's what's happening. But, I mean, like, when you then have to support that statement, all of the evidence is against you. If you actually decided to stick by that argument, like, okay, I think that actually Yoda wants Luke to go do that, and then you had to explain why, you'd have nothing to say, right? So I think that is that happens with a movie like this, but it's very different because there is not a certain level of obvious, concrete, this is the case. Mm-hmm. And so you do get into a situation where it seems like every interpretation is equally valid in how it is completely incorrect. But I do think that you could look at this and be more correct about what it's getting at than somebody else.
And see, that's the thing, is I just don't feel like there's enough ground. There's nothing to stand on. You have no standing with this movie. Like the only common ground I can agree on with what I've heard here is, yeah, sexuality. Like that much is just obvious about it. There's nothing else obvious here. Everything else is so just weird and vague. It's so nothing that it means nothing. It is devoid of meaning at a certain point. It is a waste of energy. Um, I keep saying really shitty things about this movie, and I'm gonna keep doing it. I'm working on my DVD quotes here. This is a waste of film. Literally, I am not one for burning films, but if we're gonna start somewhere, Eraserhead. If I am like in an apocalyptic scenario and we are holed up inside a movie store that only has copies of Eraserhead, I will feel nice and warm as I burn every single copy. Everything about this is just such a waste. It's so pointless. This is like a student film that just got out into the world. Ugh. So yeah, that's where I'm coming at on it. I'm just like, nothing you can say is going to sway me that it's about anything, because you can make any argument and there's nothing to stand on to say, no, this is definitively true about this movie.
Okay, so Ian, I think I've done enough Geeky Gentleman reviews with you to know that you don't get swayed.
Oh no, I get swayed. I've been swayed. Have you not talked to Steve Baxi with me?
Probably not enough times. No, like, so before recording, I figured you probably wouldn't like this and you'd be adamant in your thoughts. And so I'm not in this discussion to try to sway you. I'm just more trying to vocalize my thoughts on the movie.
No, that's fine. It's just like everything you say, I'm just like, no, that scene is meaningless. Do not ascribe meaning to this. There is nothing here.
Well, I do see meaning, though. Like, the baby, like, oh my god, when the baby, like, when he kills the baby at the end, that might be one of the most horrifying things I've ever seen. Like, I watch countless horror movies, like, every year. And I'm either bored by most of them, slightly amused by some of them, and I forget about all of them practically instantly. But like this movie sticks with me, and I think the reason is like the way this movie sounds, the way it's all orchestrated, the slowness and stillness of it all. It puts me into a mood, and it gives me a feeling, and I like that feeling, and because it puts me into a certain, I guess as Rasko would put it, it puts me into a certain trance that I can't help but feel like, ascribing meaning to the stuff that I'm looking at.
Okay. You do that.
Yep, I will continue to do that.
Yeah, that's all I got for you. You do that. You put as much meaning into this as you want. I just feel like you are that guy paying $5,000 for a painting of, a red dot on a white canvas.
But I wouldn't do that, though. Like, because the thing is, that's just like somebody dropped a red piece of paint on a white canvas.
Yeah, but what if the artist was like there and they were really, really serious about how much work they did, and they like wanted to make sure that the drop of paint was perfectly in the center of the canvas and it was perfectly rounded because they wanted to make sure it was exactly how they imagined, like, this ideal version of the white canvas with the red dot in their mind. Well, doesn't that then become art? Doesn't that then become
it's not art, but
the statement of the artist and the time and the craft put into it?
But there's not a whole lot of time and craft put into that. The thing is, like, I feel like I was able to connect with David Lynch just through this piece of work that he made that I wouldn't feel if I were to look at a blank canvas with a red dot.
Well, that's probably because painting isn't your medium, though.
That could entirely be the case.
And that's the thing, is like, it's just, you wouldn't spend money on a blank canvas, but you might on a film like this. Like, let me ask you this. They're showing Eraserhead in theaters down the street from you. Not your theater where you get in for free, you little shit. A theater where you'd actually have to pay. Would you go pay $5 to go see this movie in a theater?
Hell yeah, I'd pay this to see it in a theater.
Okay.
The way this...
Where's your
sounds
cutoff
the way
line? Where's your cutoff line? Assuming that money is no object to you, where is your cutoff line? Where it's like, no, just on principle, it is not worth that amount of money.
Like what movie or like
No,
what,
like if they're showing David Lynch's okay, you were to arrange a screening of David Lynch's Eraserhead. Where is your budget? I'm not paying more than this. Money isn't a factor, but on principle, you will not pay more than this to screen this fucking movie.
I wouldn't pay more than $10 to see it. Like it's, I don't know. Like when we're getting into the how much you pay versus how long a movie is, I then have certain qualifications there. Okay. I wouldn't pay more than $10 for an hour and a half long film.
I wouldn't pay more than a penny to see this movie burnt in a dumpster.
Well, I'm confused. That you say there's nothing here. Like there's a story. Like a guy knocks up an old
I'm exaggerating. There are things. It's just there's not enough to sink your teeth into. There's not enough that's worth your time, is where I'm at with it. And maybe, conceptually, if I were to ever watch this again on its own and sit there and really try to focus on it and connect all the dots and connect all the meaning, I might kind of somehow get to where you are. But I do not feel that is an endeavor worth my time. Because I do not feel that there is enough substance to this to make that something I need to do.
All right.
That's where I'm at with it. Rasco, are you going to watch this movie again?
Whoops, I just have my mic muted. I would watch this movie again. I would show this movie to people just to see how they react to it. Again, I don't really know how much...
This a date movie, Rasco?
This is a Rasco date movie. Hit me up, ladies, and, really attractive transgender people, too, that are women. Hit me up. We'll watch Eraserhead.
And that's when I put on my moves.
Yeah. I'll snap Rasco your face.
When that big paper mache baby head kicks up, that's when you know you gotta put into high gear.
Hold on. I was about to say something. Is it possible that this movie is an attempt to create as believable as possible, a dream? To actually recreate a plausible dream that you could have, where things don't make sense, and you wake up and you think about it and you're like, well, I don't know why the fuck I somehow understood all of these weird languages I've never heard before in my dream, and I don't know why I was here in this fictional reality, or there's dreams can be really fucking weird. Is it possible that David Lynch is I'm gonna make a dream and I want it to be completely believable as a dream? Here's the big thing that sticks out to me as such a dream moment. When he walks away from the baby and then turns around and there's the music cue and he's like, oh, you are sick. That to me is something that I could totally see happening in a dream and just not questioning it, and then waking up and being like, that was so weird when I just turned around and my dinosaur baby was covered in weird zits everywhere. It was really weird.
Rasco's dinosaur baby. You shall name your first child Dinosaur Baby.
Dinosaur Baby.
That'll be really awkward at his graduation and wedding. And graduating valedictorian is Dinosaur Baby. Rasco's in the stands. I'm so proud of you. That's my Dinosaur Baby. I don't know, Rasco. I kind of again, it's how many different interpretations. This is, we're experiencing his emotions, not what he's actually seeing. This is a dream, not the reality. There's so many different things, and those are all interesting takes on this, and I'm sure that someone probably could agree with you there, and that's an interesting idea in and of itself. Again, my continuing problem seems to be I don't care what it is. There's so little there that it could literally be anything. You can make any argument for this movie. This movie's about the nuclear proliferation. Because there's a picture in his bedroom of a mushroom cloud. It's like framed.
So I'm just gonna go on a couple of things that I picked up on this last time. So I think humorously and just kind of trying to add to the misery of this world, he has a big brick wall blocking out his window. And we only ever get one look outside his window, and it's like somebody's getting hit and like beaten up outside his window, but that's like impossible since there's a big wall in front of it. Now, I'm wondering, is he looking at something that maybe happened to him in the past? Is he actually looking at this happening in real time? I don't think that's the case. Is he looking at something that he saw way back when and he chose to not stop it? Like, what's going on down there? This happens like either right after or right before he has that weird Eraserhead dream. So I don't know. That I'm just trying to figure that all out.
So if this is a dream movie, then there's a dream sequence in the dream movie. So therefore, this is a prequel to Inception. There's my interpretation of the movie.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I like the. I don't know. David Lynch is also somebody who's like really obsessed with dreams. Like just looking at his work, there's always some kind of dream thing going on. Whether it's like Blue Velvet or Twin Peaks relies heavily on dreams and shared dreaming. So she wore blue. So then.
Don't you fucking look at me!
I know that's your favorite line ever. So.
Top 10 things to say to a woman in bed. Number 1. Don't you fucking look at me.
Let's see. Other things I picked up on. I didn't realize it the first time, but they shove a tube into his brain during the Eraserhead sequence, and then it's like they chop up the strip of brain and then put it into Eraserheads.
What I thought they were doing is getting like a core sample, like you do when you're testing for mold or whatever in walls.
Yeah.
Yeah, or trees rather. You drill into it, and then you there's like a kind of a needle essentially inside the drill that collects a sample, and then you pull that out, and you can pull it out of the drill, and that's what that looked like to me.
It looked a bit to me like it was like a tube, and then it cut out wherever the root was, so it just has this long tube of brain, and they shove it in the machine, and then the pencils go by that don't have erasers in them, and then when they pass by the machine, then they have erasers in them, and then they use basically his brain matter as an eraser to erase something, and then it's like, is that I don't know. I know you're just gonna say it could be anything, but what I'm getting from this is, is he blocking out memories? Are there memories that he's chosen to forget about? What's going on there? Is that somehow connected to him looking out the window? And
did he have sex with the mother, and that's why? Hold on, that could really be something. Maybe he had sex with the mother too, and that's why she had an orgasm, and it was just she had the orgasm, but it wasn't like they were having sex there. It was just her having an orgasm means they had sex. He gave her that orgasm. That's why it's awkward.
And she does come on to him when she's confronting him about.
You're right.
Yeah, every woman in this movie makes a pass at Henry at some point.
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah. And now you really know it's a dream.
Yep. You know what? God bless you, Jack Nance. He kept that hairstyle for 5 full years while they were filming this movie.
Jack Nance, I'm sorry you wasted 5 years of your life on that god-awful hairstyle.
Well, it was the 70s. I don't think it's that out there.
Oh yeah, all fashion in the 70s was awful.
It was.
awfully good.
Fashion in the 70s, like, there's almost nothing from the 80s, like, that's really worth your while as far as, like, fashion, cars, a lot of
Except
the
for
music's,
everything.
a lot of the music's pretty bad. 70s
for
had some
no.
good stuff, but man, 70s fashion's really awful too.
And you want to talk about bad cars, there's the 1990s, which managed to make it worse than the 80s.
Yeah, those 80s and early 90s Mustangs really suck.
Oh, they suck.
Well, check out the fucking 86 Corvette, bro. Don't tell me that nothing cool came out of the 80s.
Oh, the 80s. The 80s have a lot of a waste of a decade in them.
What's also kind of cool about this movie, so this was made for like, I think $10,000, $20,000. I know that half of the budget was given to Lynch through a grant he got from the AFI, because he was a student at the American Film Institute. And so I guess you're right, that in a lot of ways this is a student film. But where was I going with this? I can't remember. Oh yeah, this came out in 1977 when it was finally complete and released into a limited release, which is the same year as the original Star Wars. And where I like to go with this sort of comparison is in 1968, where Night of the Living Dead and 2001: A Space Odyssey came out in the same year. And I think that's really cool because you have two movies. One's a really, really low shoestring budget horror film that was shot on black and white film stock. And then you have, this big epic science fiction extravaganza with 2001. I think both of those movies are masterpieces in their own right. I think I'd put them on like the same plane of I like those movies. One's obviously more technically skilled than the other, but I love both of those movies. But they're on entirely different ends of the spectrum as far as how classy they are, I guess. And this is a similar thing to Star Wars, where one's this big, huge movie that everyone loves, and one's this small little midnight movie. But I also want to say that the special effects in this movie are great. That baby looks incredible. I don't know if that's a puppet or like a weird like cattle fetus that they were able to animate or what, but it looks
It's a
great.
puppet.
It's a really good puppet if it's a puppet.
Yeah.
The fleshy tone on it looks great.
It
And the
probably
long
helps
shots-
that it's in black and white.
Probably. And again, none of the people on this production ever said how they made that baby. So,
Maybe
Maybe
just
it's a
like,
real deformed baby that they murdered for the sake of art.
yeah, probably. That was going to be my theory. Confirmed. That's my interpretation.
I was really curious as to how they got like that machine at the end. Like, what the fuck is that? Like a real machine that like actually functions, or did they do something to make it look like it was putting the eraser on, like the erasers on the pencils? Like, that's like, I was curious about that. Like, did they make that? What is that? Is that like an actual pencil making machine or some bullshit?
I imagine it's probably just a real machine. That's probably just how pencils have been made at one point in time. Either that or, it'd be really easy to just set up, like, 5 pencils that cycle back that don't have erasers and 5 pencils that cycle forward that do have erasers. So you just create the illusion that you're making pencils with erasers. Yeah. So it could go either way.
I really get the vibe. This whole movie feels like it's in like a dollhouse. Does anybody else feel that way?
Nope.
What's kind of cool about that read, though, is this movie. Like, it's hard for me to like think that this came out in 1977 because it feels like it takes place outside of time. Because a lot of its architecture looks like German expressionist films, like Nosferatu or Metropolis, and so much of it takes place in one room. And that's why I think you're feeling the way you're feeling, Resco. Because I know most of this was filmed in an attic. So, I can't remember where I was going. Oh, yeah, but, like, the special effects look really good, like, way better than, like, I don't know, anything in Return of the Jedi, so...
Oh, God, no, fuck you. Shut up.
Dude, you can see the huge green lines around them when they're getting fed to the pit of Sarlacc.
No, fuck you. Get the fuck out.
The special effects of this movie are incredible. I'll say that much.
No,
But
not compared to Jedi. Not even close. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, it's not even close. This is so much better. So
Shut the fuck, Connor. I'm booting you from the call.
So,
You
but at the
fucking
same time-
beta male cuck.
Yeah, that is a beta male move, Connor. Really.
No, fuck you.
I mean-
Star Wars dominates this movie.
Anything,
Dominates.
any special effects lacking quality in that scene, it makes up for it with the fucking space battle at the end, dude.
Yeah, space. Okay, yeah. I was mostly thinking that with the Tatooine stuff.
No, even the
all the-
Tatooine stuff's pretty damn good. It gets a little over the top, but it's fun, so it doesn't matter. It's they spent less of their budget collectively if you compared them, amount of budget spent on one scene compared to the other. They probably spent a lot of fucking money on that stupid baby.
They did.
I would be willing to bet at least a good 2/3 of their budget went to the baby.
I'll tell you how I would make it. I would take some sort of like melon or squash or some sort of fruit, and then I would skin it. So like I'd peel off all like the skin. It would probably work best with a melon. And then you got to get it nice and like smooth, and then you could maybe put some sort of like weird like KY jelly all over it to make it look like it's got like a smooth slimy skin. And you'd have to like you could get I could really get creative and think of how to recreate
So
that kind of
Rasco's
puppet.
like cutting a melon and putting KY jelly in it. There's something you want to tell us, bud?
I'm gonna fuck that melon, dude.
So what I was getting at was like the special effects are like way ahead of 1977 standards, I think. But the architecture reminds me of like a gothic German expressionist film. But the fashion and the clothes they wear look like something out of a Charlie Chaplin movie. So I feel like this movie is like so eclectic and like outside of time, and I think that really lends to the dream factor of it. And there's always some kind of sound happening, whether it's blowing wind or it's a very subtle sound design.
Yeah.
Going down in this movie.
Yeah, I agree. I like the technical side of this movie. Technically, it's impressive, especially with the sound design. Framing was, decent. The shots looked interesting. I like a lot of the transitions and the fades and dissolves and stuff like that. The beginning shot, I knew it was going to be one of those fucking movies, but it was still a cool shot of him just like slowly moving across the screen looking around. The generation of the sperm worm in that first opening sequence looked awful, though. You want to say this had better special effects than the Star Wars, I'm going to show you that scene and then show you the Death Star firing and then slap you with the tape. So yeah, I don't know. It's just like it's well shot. It's well made, especially for 77. Yeah, I am a little surprised that it's 77. It does look like later 80s, but doesn't matter because it's a waste of your time anyway.
Okay.
I'm cranky because I'm tired.
I can imagine.
And I don't want to be talking about this awful movie anymore. Let's just change the subject and talk about something else. Let's see here. What's going on in the world?
James Comey was
James
fired
Comey
and Donald
was-
Trump might be impeached.
James Comey was fired. Donald Trump might be impeached. He just constantly lies to the people. That's interesting. You know what I want to watch? I want to watch Donald Trump's take on this movie. Where he's gonna be like, the dinosaur baby is an immigrant, and we're gonna kick it out of the country.
I really am thinking about changing up my do. And when I saw this film, it really inspired me. It's my new haircut, actually. I'm going to get it tomorrow.
I think that Henry really needs to get himself a better woman.
Maybe you should date
He's
my
gotta
daughter.
get him that broad
My daughter's
across
very
the
attractive. Have you seen the bazongas on her? And by bazongas, I mean breasts.
I want to
My
grab
breasts
him
on
right
your
by the
titties.
hair.
Oh, man.
That woman across the hallway's got great stamina.
Stamina. I
Stamina.
mispronounced that word in my debate prep, but now I know it really well, so I'm gonna overpronounce. I'm gonna overpronunciate it.
Oh, man. Silliness here on Geeky Gentleman. Okay, is there anything else you want to say about this movie, Connor?
I mean, I would, but no.
Rasco, is there any final thoughts you want to get out on this?
I don't know. Not really.
Okay. Man, oh man. Alright. Let's go on to ratings then. I'm going to start off. I'm going to give this a 0.5 out of 4, or 0.5 out of 5 framed pictures of a mushroom cloud. That's how fucking bored I was. I was looking around the awful set.
It's a good set. Shut up.
I'm gonna give this where I'm standing right now. I'm gonna give this I'll give it a 3 out of 5 scrotum cheeks.
Nice. And I will give this movie, like 4, maybe? Somewhere between 3.5 to 4, but probably leaning on the 4 side of things. Yeah, 4 in heaven out of 5.
Made it through that one. Okay. I've got what we're going to talk about. This will be interesting, especially if we can get Steve on it. I was having a conversation today, working on this audio drama, and I was discussing, like, that audio dramas aren't really a thing anymore. So I don't want to just talk about audio dramas, but they're going to come up next week. We're going to discuss declining art forms. Yeah, should be interesting. Everyone, thank you very much for watching. If you haven't seen Eraserhead, don't. But hopefully this podcast turned you off of it.
Ian meant to say don't without first doing some sort of psychedelic drug. That's what he really meant to say.
I mean, I'm sure that would help. Psychedelic drugs, whatever you gotta do. Don't do drugs, kids, but if you're gonna watch this movie, you should probably do drugs, kids. Until next time, I'm the philosopher.
I am the beta male cuck.
And I'm the Santa.
And we are your geeky gentlemen. And we will be discussing